Very good.
So we've been discussing, we all agree that we're on an unsustainable path. Some of us think there's the point of no return, and some of us think there is hope. Let's start talking
I
about...
think we all think
We all
there's
think
hope.
there's hope.
The issue is
I
how
don't.
much hope.
How much hope?
I wouldn't,
Well, I mean, we...
I wouldn't have flown down here for this if I didn't think there
Right,
was hope.
that's
And you
the
might
thing.
not even be getting up. Sometimes I think, well, I must have hope somewhere deep inside me because I get up in the morning and I keep working for these issues. So
Yes.
somewhere there
Yeah.
must be hope.
I'm the
or
only,
denial.
I'm
just
the
hope
only
there's hope.
great-grandfather at the table, and I care about my great-granddaughter. I can't say... There may only be a
That's a
5%
good point.
chance we can get to a sustainable path, but I don't see anything else ethical to do for people
That's
like
right.
us but to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Perfectly well stated, and John, you remarked, it is neither too late nor too costly to save the planet. And I think we're all here believing in that.
Yeah.
However, we're not pessimistic, we're
Yeah.
realists
No,
as to
I
what's
think
going on.
optimism is a moral imperative.
That's a good.
But not
that's a good-
denial, because sometimes optimism can. And can we start talking about solutions? Because I know Rod mentioned technological solutions. You talked about human nature being. We have to switch human nature around, and I think
No.
not human nature. I'm sorry, human attitude.
Yeah, I think that human nature is, we have everything that we need to make this shift. And we know now what brings out the qualities that are needed now, and we can put those in place.
But why haven't we done it then? Why haven't
Well, first of
we
all,
done
we're
it when we have?
learning a lot more
learning.
all the time. For example, we now know that we have built-in neurons that help us be empathetic. And one of the absolutely critical things is to be able to put yourself in the shoes, say, of a poor 12-year-old girl in sub-Saharan Africa who's going to have a miserable time working when the men don't work, trying to grow food when she can't get the right loans and support and so on, and where the rich people are still taking from Africa rather than giving back. In other words, we do know a lot more about human behavior. Unhappily, the social sciences haven't gotten together as a group to really push what we know. For example, one of the common views in the world, I had an argument with Al Gore about this, although he's coming around, is that if we only give people more rapid scientific information, they'll do the right thing. If there is anything that the social sciences have shown us without the slightest doubt, is that simply giving people information per se does not get them to do the right thing.
It has to be convenient. It has to be easy.
It also has to be
Economic.
presented correctly, and you have to change certain norms and so on. It's a very complicated business, but the social scientists can be very helpful. And let me tell you something cheery. We had a symposium at the Ecological Society of America meeting based on our whole plan to try and get the behavioral side in, where social scientists came to ecologists and explained to them what is needed to make the kinds of changes in norms and behavior that we need to make.
And what were their suggestions?
Well, one of the things, for instance, is I'll give you an example. You go to a hotel room. This is a minor example for a major problem. You go to a hotel room and you find on your towel rack a thing that says, use your towels again, you can save the environment. Well, they did experiments on this. Got hotels to cooperate, put those in some rooms. Has absolutely zero effect. No effect at all. Doesn't matter.
You mean the altruistic
the
effect?
people in the rooms with the things which say save the environment use their towels exactly the same amount as the people in the rooms that have no sign. If you put the sign in that says save the environment, reuse your towels, 50% of the people who stay in this hotel do this, then you get some
Yes,
change.
peer pressure.
If you say 78% of the people using this room reuse their towels, then you get a huge effect. It turns out that they call this provincial norms. It turns out that this happens, they've done this with energy consumption in homes. Even showing them they're paying more money by not conserving doesn't change their behavior, but if you show them that their neighbors are saving, they do it. So one of the things that gives you a whole new approach to presenting a lot of environmental problems, like how you save energy.
So keeping up with the Joneses, which got us in trouble in the first
First place,
might
yeah.
save us.
Right.
But this is the joy of people like Bill Clinton going on television and saying, I'm vegan because I want to see my grandchildren. Suddenly it's respectable. You have Russell Simmons.
I think
head
he
of-
said I lost 25 pounds. That's what really got people
That
going
also-
vegan, you know.
You are absolutely right. And you have all these corporate movers and shakers who are looking after their own self-interest. They want to clean out their own arteries. countries. I don't know that they're thinking about the world, but then people look at that and they decide, well, now I can do that too. And there is a wonderful knock-on effect for the world.
Frances talked about the genius of the small farmer in one of her books. And I've been involved in industrial agriculture from a perspective of working on organic fertilizer, and my daughter does it full time. That's her profession, is sustainable agriculture. Is this a big issue here, industrial agriculture? Is this something that we want to address at some point? Because when I drive up the highway and I go by a feedlot and I see 100,000 cattle in the same place, I can smell it 5 miles away. I know the effects of that. Is this something that is globally affecting all of us?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I think I can brag about my daughter's new book, Diet for a Hot Planet. And she tells us that, particularly because of land use changes, of forest destruction, that agriculture, what I call chemical and capital intensive agriculture, now accounts for about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. And most of that is livestock, as Ingrid said. So it is a huge, huge contributor.
But we've been
Absolutely.
taught that the Green Revolution and that we have to be able to have this industrialized agriculture, not so much necessarily cows, but the big corporations feeding us because of our growing population, Bob. We've been told that. Can small farmers feed the world?
Absolutely.
Depends on
it's
how.
how. It's how is the question. And wonderful thing is that now we have a number of meta studies that have looked at a range of environments in which small farmers have moved to sustainable practices. Not all of them totally organic, but in this direction of sustainable practices, and have found significant increases in production. And the most well-known is University of Michigan in 2007, a study showing that if the whole world went to agroecological farming, that we could actually increase production and help to balance the carbon cycle, because so much carbon is held in the soil when we are farming in an agroecological way. We are working with nature. So this is a huge, and it's so exciting to me.
But it's a power,
because
it's a
of
power and
Africa.
governance issue.
It's a power and governance issue, and that goes back to human nature, really. And what I wanted to say about human nature is that I don't think we have to change it, but I think that we now know what is the power situation that brings out the best in us. And we know it's when power is dispersed and we have a voice, we have a say. Because human beings, we are creatures who love to be efficacious, to get things done, you know? So that's what's happening in parts of Africa. Well, small farmers are coming together and learning these new practices and standing up against GMOs and against dependency on industrial seeds. And it's the most inspiring thing, I think, in the world.
Now, Bob, you in your work dealing with population, talk about human nature. Procreating is such a basic issue in human nature. Yet people have lowered their family size. How has that been done if it's so against human nature?
I started my career as a soil scientist in Africa and realized very quickly that we could never grow enough food to accommodate the population. What happens is the bubble's just getting bigger. Technology makes the bubble bigger, energy makes the bubble bigger, interdependence makes the global bigger. We live in a global world. Once these bubbles start to burst, whether we are destroying our habitat and therefore destroying ourselves, whether we are going towards the zero fossil fuel future, all these bubbles are going to collapse. And the people who are going to be caught are people in cities, in civilizations. More people will be starving tomorrow in New York if these bubbles start to burst than in most parts of India, because they are closer to the means of their own subsistence, because they don't have ecological systems that are dependent on non-renewable resources. We haven't even started talking about phosphates or nitrogen. And all of these factors are building bubbles that are going to pop. And we don't know when they're going to pop. We don't know where they're going to pop. All we know that they're bubbles that are going to happen and they're going to collapse. So these agricultural systems that have become global in scale and the way in which food is distributed in the world is going to stop. Niger started with 2 million people. They are on their way to 60 million people.
60.
60.
So in the span of how long, Bob?
That period of time is close to 75 years. Okay, that 2 to 60.
So
But when
30 times in 75
I was in Indonesia a couple of weeks ago with a representative from Mali. Okay, they started at 2 million people. They have 15 million people. Momentum factors alone will triple the population. Every single country in sub-Saharan Africa has increased 4 times, except for those countries that have increased 5 times. And because half the population is below 15, the population has to double and or triple just because of momentum factors built in the age profile. To stay where they are right now, they have to have a one-child family for the next 30 years.
I
isn't
think
going to
one of the
happen.
things we're missing that
And
is
so
really
you tell me
important-
what's positive about Africa's future.
What's really important, one of the things that's really important here is the time scale of making changes. In other words, everybody who's looked at it knows that sort of medium-sized farms are the best ways to go. That is, you have the farm small enough so that the farmer knows the difference among the fields, can treat the fields differently, but large enough so he can afford the basic machinery that's necessary to run it. But when you think of what the barriers to transition to that, when we are facing a decade or 2 decades at most to get the job done, when you think of the barriers, the time it would take to restructure the water handling infrastructure of the entire planet and restructure it for flexibility and change the energy system of the entire planet, the time course
Away
of these
from
things,
fossil fuels? Because
listen, invading Iraq to get its oil was equivalent if we were starving to invading Iraq to get its cyanide. In other words, the last thing in the world the United States needs is more oil. You know, Obama missed a terrific opportunity to educate people when we had that blowout in the Gulf.
Oh my God.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't remember where the flow figures
Yeah.
are now, but roughly it would have required something like 100 to 200 times that flow just to fuel our automobiles. In other words, the scale of the problem.
Another way of looking at that spill is that if we had taken energy efficiency measures so that we didn't need that oil that they were pumping, we wouldn't have had the spill, and we would all be richer because we wouldn't be spending the money on expensive
Yeah.
oil. We'd be spending the money on inexpensive efficiency.
And creating jobs with solar
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
And
We could be richer and cleaner if we were only smarter.
The first oil well that produced in the United States went down 79 feet. That thing went down a couple of miles, and then there were miles beyond that. There should be a lesson for
And then it
economists in
gushed
that, but
out
they
of
can't do
control for
arithmetic.
quite a
yet.
while.
And then back to your factory farming, intensive agriculture question, I'm sure you've seen it probably more than most of us, is that we're introducing factory farming and intensive agriculture into places where it's the last thing they need. And it's short-term
Yeah, they
thinking,
play-
which
So
is the
you
basis
have
of all the
criminal
problems.
activity
Yes.
with the heads of governments throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And they're totally ignoring the population equation.